On the highest hill of the most luxurious neighborhood in Eldoria, the Magnolia Villa stands tall as a symbol of power and prosperity. It is the home of Charlotte Drake, a talented businesswoman who has single-handedly built a financial empire across continents. With large glass windows overlooking the colorful flower garden, she looks down with pride and a hint of arrogance. Beside Charlotte is Robert, her handsome and beloved husband, who is gently looking into the distance. Although his face remains calm, his eyes are filled with a disagreement that Charlotte completely fails to notice. "Do you think this is heaven on earth?" Robert asked, his voice calm but cold. Charlotte smiled, placing her hand on her husband's, both warm and fierce. "Yes, Robert, this is everything I dreamed of, and this is just the beginning for us." Charlotte had built her career with blood, sweat, and tears. She never allowed herself to stop, even when faced with unforeseen difficulties. Robert admired his wife's passion and discipline, but deep down, he felt suffocated by her high demands. "Let's go out to dinner tonight. You deserve a reward," Charlotte said with a rare cheerful tone, a small way for Robert. He smiled and nodded in agreement, but it was only a fleeting smile, lacking sincerity. As Charlotte turned to adjust her earrings in the mirror, Robert looked at his reflection, quickly hiding the contempt in his eyes. Charlotte was completely unaware, her mind still absorbed in important contracts and decisions. While she thought Robert was the ideal companion, in reality, he was just harboring dreams of the luxurious life Charlotte would bring. That night, when Charlotte received an irresistible phone call, Robert was faced with an empty dinner tray and table. As she left in a hurry, he quickly pulled out his phone and texted, "Clear. See you now." With the phone hidden, Robert's face returned to its placid, deceitful servant's expression. When Charlotte returned, it was just another evening her husband was away. Instead, the plot began to unfold. Darkness enveloped the city of Eldoria, the yellow streetlights casting a faint yellow glow on the wet pavement after a light rain. In a deserted parking lot on the edge of town, Robert stepped out of his expensive sports car, his face showing an unusual determination. He waited for a short while before a young man approached. "Victor, you're here," Robert said softly, his voice cold as steel. Victor nodded, his face showing concern. "Are you sure about this? If we get caught, we won't get away." "Don't worry, I've calculated everything," Robert replied, his eyes flashing dangerously. "Charlotte will take the car tomorrow morning. We just need to make sure the brakes are faulty. Then it will look like an accident." Victor frowned, his eyes showing hesitation. "Robert, this is too dangerous. She trusted me so much. If I do this, I will lose everything." Robert lowered his voice, his sharp eyes staring at Victor. "Do you think you have a choice, Victor? Don't forget, I know everything about the shady money you used to buy that new apartment. If you don't want to spend your whole life in prison, you better listen to me." Victor took a step back, fear written all over his face. You can't do that." Robert chuckled, his voice becoming more dangerous. "You want to see if I'll do it? Remember, I'm not a joker." Victor was silent for a moment, then sighed. "Okay, I'll do as you say, but are you sure no one will suspect me?" "You're the one she trusts the most in her work. Don't let anything slip and we'll be fine." Robert patted Victor's shoulder, as if to reassure, but also to warn. "Don't forget the goal. After this, her empire will belong to us." When Victor left, Robert stood alone in the dark. He took out a cigarette, lit it. The faint light from the cigarette tip fell on his face, revealing a sinister smile. Not far away, in a hidden corner of the parking lot, a young girl in tattered clothes was huddled to avoid the cold wind. It was Emily, a homeless girl who lived in this area. Accidentally hearing the conversation between the two men, she held her breath, trying not to make any noise. As Robert drove away, Emily emerged from her hiding place, her eyes wide with fear and determination. "I have to do something," she whispered to herself, clutching her thin coat. The next morning, Eldoria City was covered in a thin layer of fog, the pale sunlight filtering through the tall buildings. At the gate of the Magnolia Villa, Emily stood there, small and huddled in her tattered coat. She had been up all night, thinking about what she should do. As the luxurious car rolled out of the garage, Emily took a deep breath, ran to the front of the car, waving her hands frantically. Charlotte sat in the car, slightly startled, signaling the driver to stop. She lowered the window, her eyes coldly looking at the strange girl. What are you doing? Charlotte asked, her voice filled with suspicion. Emily swallowed, her voice trembling but determined. I need to talk to you. It's about your life. Charlotte frowned. My life? Who are you to say such things? I heard it last night in the parking lot. There was a man named Robert and another man. They they were planning to damage your brakes. They wanted you to have an accident, Emily said in one breath, her eyes full of urgency. Charlotte was stunned, her gaze shifting from surprise to anger. What are you talking about? Robert is my husband. There's no way he would do that. Emily shook her head. I'm not making this up. If you don't believe me, have someone check the brakes. Please, have them checked before it's too late. Charlotte was silent for a moment, her eyes lingering on Emily's pleading face. She turned to the driver and ordered, Take the car to the garage. Get a mechanic to check it right away. While waiting, Charlotte looked at Emily suspiciously. Who are you? Why do you care about this? Emily lowered her head, her voice choked. I'm just a homeless person, but I can't stand by and watch someone get hurt when I can do something to stop it. A few minutes later, the mechanic ran out of the garage, his face pale, his voice trembling. Mrs. Drake, I have checked carefully. The car's brake system has been tampered with. If the car runs, it will definitely cause a serious accident. Charlotte felt a chill run down her spine. Anger and pain surged in her mind. She turned to look at Emily, her eyes softening for the first time. Thank you, not only for this warning, but also for your courage. I think I need to know more about you. Emily bowed her head, saying nothing, but her eyes shone with relief and determination. A sudden trust began to form between the two women from two completely different worlds. Charlotte didn't take long to gather her thoughts. After securing the car, she sat in her large study, her eyes sharper than ever. Not only was she furious at her husband's betrayal, but she also realized that she had to act immediately to protect herself and the empire she had built. Emily, meanwhile, was invited into the house and sat in the large armchair in the living room. She felt out of place in the lavish space, but Charlotte's gaze upon her was no longer cold. Instead, it was the gaze of someone seeking an ally. Emily, Charlotte began, her voice now slow but firm. You saved my life this morning. I want to know, why are you taking such a risk? Do you realize that if I don't believe you, you could be in danger? Emily looked up, her eyes shining with determination. I have nothing to lose, ma'am. I've seen too much bad in my life. If I can save someone, especially someone like you, I will. I don't want to stand by and regret it. Charlotte was silent for a moment, then nodded slightly. You're braver than most people I've ever met, and now I need your help. She paused, looking directly at Emily. We're not just going to stop Robert's plot. I want to expose him and his accomplices. I want them to pay. Emily swallowed, but she nodded. I'm willing to help, but are you sure you want to confront him directly? They are dangerous. Charlotte smiled, but the smile carried a coldness. Emily, I have faced danger all my life. This is just another challenge, but this time I will not be alone. Charlotte disappears after the fake accident, leaving a huge void in Robert's life. News of Charlotte's accident spreads, allowing Robert and Victor to begin their plan to seize the property. They are confident that everything is under their control. Robert appears before the press with a sad appearance, but his eyes cannot hide his arrogance. Charlotte is an extraordinary woman. This loss is too great for me, he says. His tone measured, but his lips curl into a small smile that only Victor can recognize. Meanwhile, Victor begins to handle the necessary procedures to transfer financial control from Charlotte to Robert. Both are confident that everything will go smoothly. No one suspects anything. At a safe house not far from the Magnolia mansion, Charlotte was secretly monitoring Robert and Victor's every move. Emily became an important bridge, continuing to pretend to be an unrelated homeless person, but secretly providing information to Charlotte. They're too complacent, Charlotte commented as she looked through the documents Emily brought back. We're letting them walk into a trap. However, it wasn't long before Victor began to feel that something was wrong. Robert, don't you think things are going too smoothly? If Charlotte is really dead, why hasn't there been an audit of her assets? Robert brushed off Victor's worries, but he also began to feel uneasy inside. Don't speculate. She's done for. We just need to focus on taking everything. Charlotte decided to increase the tension. She sent an anonymous letter to Robert, which read simply, "You thought it was over, but it's just the beginning." Robert received the letter, his hands shaking. "Who sent this? Victor, are you sure no one else knows?" Victor was worried, but tried to stay calm. "It can't be. Someone must be playing a prank. We can't let this get to us." Robert and Victor sank deeper into a state of panic, while Charlotte and Emily prepared for the final blow. "They're starting to crumble from the inside," Charlotte said, a cold smile on her face. "We just have to wait for the right moment." News of Charlotte's will reading spread quickly. Robert and Victor, after days of confusion from anonymous letters and mysterious messages, decided to take the opportunity to confirm that they had everything under control. With confidence, they showed up at Charlotte's lawyer's office. The large conference room of the lawyer's office was packed with people, including legal staff, Charlotte's close friends, and other close people. Robert sat in the front row, his face showing a fake sadness. Victor sat right next to him, trying to maintain his composure. The head lawyer, Mr. Harris, entered with a folder in his hand. He glanced around before speaking. "Thank you all for coming today. As everyone knows, this is the official reading of Charlotte Drake's will. However, before we begin, I would like to make an important announcement." He paused, his gaze sweeping solemnly over Robert and Victor. "Mrs. Blythe Drake updated her will shortly before the recent events." The room fell silent. Robert frowned, but quickly hid his concern with a forced smile. Mr. Harris continued, "In the last update, Mrs. Drake added a clause. If she died under suspicious circumstances, the entire estate would remain in place and would not be passed to anyone until all investigations were completed. Additionally, if there was evidence of any individual's involvement in her death, that person would be removed from the list of heirs." Robert's expression changed dramatically. He tried to stand up to protest, but Mr. Harris interrupted. "Mr. Robert, please sit down. I haven't finished reading yet." Before Mr. Harris could continue, the door to the conference room suddenly swung open. Charlotte walked in, dressed in elegant clothes, her face calm but her eyes sharp. The whole room was shocked. Robert stood still, his eyes wide with surprise. "No way!" Robert stammered, his voice trembling. Charlotte stepped forward, her eyes never leaving Robert and Victor. "Surprised? I'm sure you didn't think you'd see me again. But I'm here to bring it all to light." The conference room fell silent. Charlotte continued, her voice sharp. "Robert, Victor, I know everything, from the plot to sabotage my car to the plans to seize my assets. Luckily, I'm still here, and you can't hide it any longer." Charlotte gestured, and a large screen turned on, showing the videos and recordings that she and Emily had collected. In them were conversations between Robert and Victor, with detailed plans to cause an accident for Charlotte. Victor hung his head, no longer able to defend himself. Robert struggled to speak. This is a fake. Charlotte, you can't believe this." Charlotte smiled faintly, her voice full of sarcasm. "Really, Robert? I've trusted you too much all these years, but now everything is clear." At that moment, the door to the conference room opened again, this time with police officers. They approached Robert and Victor, reading the arrest warrant in front of everyone. "Robert Drake, Victor Collins, you are under arrest for attempted murder and financial fraud," an officer announced. Robert struggled, but all efforts were in vain. Charlotte looked at the scene before her with a cold calm. As Robert and Victor are taken away, Charlotte turns to look at everyone in the room. "Today is not only a day to expose the truth, but also a reminder that greed and betrayal never win. I thank everyone for being here and witnessing." Emily, standing in the corner of the room, looks at Charlotte with admiration. She knows a new chapter has begun, not only for Charlotte, but for her as well. Robert and Victor's case quickly goes to court with all the convincing evidence Charlotte and Emily have gathered. At the trial, the atmosphere is tense as prosecutors present audio recordings, videos, and documents proving the two traitors' criminal conspiracy. Charlotte appears in court with a calm but determined demeanor. She is the main witness, presenting clearly and in detail what happened. Meanwhile, Robert and Victor try to deny their guilt, but cannot deny the undeniable evidence. Emily is also called as a witness. She recounts how she accidentally discovered the plot and bravely informed Charlotte. The truth is revealed, and the young girl becomes a model of courage before the entire jury. Finally, the verdict is announced. Robert is convicted of conspiracy to commit murder and financial fraud, sentenced to 25 years in prison. Victor received a lighter sentence of 15 years in prison for cooperating in the final stages of the investigation. The verdict was welcomed by the public, who had closely followed the case. After the trial, Charlotte felt relieved. She had overcome one of the greatest challenges of her life, but the betrayal by the person she had trusted most had left a deep wound. However, she did not allow herself to wallow in grief. With Emily's help, Charlotte decided to focus on rebuilding her company and her life. Emily, once homeless, now found her place. Charlotte offered her to stay at Magnolia Mansion and learn how to work at the company. "You saved my life," Charlotte said. "This is your chance to start over." Emily, though emotional, remained humble. "Thank you. I will do my best." Charlotte focused on rebuilding the company. She not only repaired the damage, but also brought a new vision. Charlotte believed that all the hardships had helped her see more clearly the value of people and the importance of loyalty. In meetings, she became more gentle, not only a leader, but also an inspiration to the team. "We are not just building a company, we are building trust," she told the employees. Emily, under Charlotte's guidance, gradually learned and developed. She began to take on small tasks in the company, from processing paperwork to helping manage projects. Every day, she became more confident and professional. Charlotte constantly encouraged Emily, "You have more potential than you think. Believe in yourself."